Aloha, everyone. So, Council Member Tom Cook is kind of in the news right now because local lawyer Les Iskovitz has done an ethics complaint against him for his position at LC Hauling, um, which is a construction consulting company. And the idea is that that's a conflict of interest with his job as a council member, where he has to regulate construction and development. And I wanted to bring folks' attention to my ethics complaint from January 2024. And the root of that was that I was on a Board of Ethics meeting in August 2023, August 29th. And they were discussing Councilmember Cook's letter. And so that's how I learned about it. Now, the reason I was on that Board of Ethics meeting is that I had worked for the planning department for 3 years. And at that point, in August, I had already left. But I had earlier in that year uh, reported malfeasance and possibly fraud and unethical activity to Mayor Bisson that had been going on within the planning department. And I reported that both to Mayor Bisson and the managing director. Shortly after, the planning department launched an investigation into me. And the person they assigned to investigate me was one of those people implicated in my letters to Mayor Bisson and the managing director. And she was also aware of those letters. She had seen the letters. Uh, so I was asking the Board of Ethics to require her to recuse herself from investigating me because that's a clear conflict of interest. You can't investigate someone who's reporting you with protections under the whistleblower law to the mayor, right? That seems obvious, but they ended up ruling against me and said that it was okay for her to investigate. But at that point, it kind of didn't matter because I had already left. But the reason I had left was because of retaliation. So just so everyone is aware of some of the background. Um, and I'm still working on uh, obtaining information and getting things investigated at the planning department. And my background is in, like, before I went to the planning department, I worked for Texas Highway Patrol, and I worked with people, including my supervisor, who had been very knowledgeable and had worked on public corruption issues. So that's why I'm aware of that kind of stuff and know about corruption and think that government being accountable and being ethical is very important. I'm not a super law and order person. Uh, we all speed, we all break various laws and we get away with it, and that's kind of okay. But when government is doing bad things and getting away with it or helping super rich moneyed interests, private businesses at the expense of the public, that's what I'm concerned about. So that's why this stuff is important to me. Now, I was on this meeting and I learned about this letter because they were discussing it and they had kind of gone through, Councilmember Cook was asking for an advisory opinion for his work with LC Hauling, and he explained what they do. It's construction consulting. Uh, and he said he was a consultant for them, and then, they would have construction clients. And he was advised, I guess, by one of the lawyers, Remy Mitchell, on this, who was also on that meeting. And I do have the transcript pulled up. You can look this up yourself if you Google this BOE 82923. You can find the same document. But they had discussed quite a bit about the nature of that job, and they were kind of getting into the conflict of interest thing, but they kind of got sidetracked and they ended up issuing a ruling that was really very specific about contracts that LC Hauling might have. Like, he would have to um, accuse himself, like, if they have any matters at council. But they didn't say anything about LC Hauling's clients. And so they didn't address the actual conflict of interest, which is that the council member is making $96,000 per year for very part-time work, probably like whatever time and energy he has left over after being a council member, uh, for this company that is being paid by the construction industry and the development industry, most likely. Uh, they didn't require him to disclose or recuse from any of their dealings at council, whether it be changes in zoning or contracts or whatever. So that's an issue that I saw, and I ended up submitting a complaint. And uh, I said it's a violation of the conflict of interest section, as well as potential conflicts. Basically, the door is open to some additional ones using his position to get privileges. And I kind of said it, not necessarily intentional, but if you're in a position, the whole point of conflict of interest is you're in a position where you can benefit that private entity that you are also involved in. It's not necessarily that you're like twirling your mustache and being like, oh, how can I be evil? How can how can I get unwarranted consideration or privileges? It might be subconscious that you're helping your employers, clients, or like business uh, connections and things like that. It doesn't have to be intentional. That's the whole issue with these conflicts of interest. Why you're required to disclose and recuse, right? And the other thing is that you're not allowed to appear on behalf of a private interest. So to me, like if you're even if it's inadvertent and you're representing in their interests, whether it's the construction industry or whatever you're connected to, that's also a potential violation of allowing Councilmember Cook to not recuse and to just continue, right? So I cited those things, and I said, I was really straightforward with this. I said that he should be required to disclose and recuse. I didn't say he should be fired from the council. I didn't say he should, go to jail or anything. I just said he should have to disclose and recuse his with the clients of LC Hauling. That seems pretty obvious, right? Now, they issued an opinion in response to my complaint, and they said, let's see, the complaint fails to contain an allegation that the respondent did not act in accordance, and blah blah blah, hypothetical scenarios. Yeah, I did say there was potential violations because of their previous ruling, but the conflict of interest itself is also a violation. That's spelled out in the charter. You can't have a job that is in conflict. And the Board of Ethics has ruled that county employees can't have a second job. I can't remember the specific cases, but I know there have been rulings against people where they are not allowed to have a private job that conflicts with their public job. So they basically held Councilmember Cook to a different standard, and they ignored the entire conflict of interest issue, and they just said, "Oh, it's hypothetical." And then they again went into this applying to matters in which LC Hauling is trying to directly contract with the county, or if they have a potential subcontract. And it's like, that's not the main point. Like, if anything, that's less of an issue than the regulation thing, because that's a real conflict between often public interests, the environment, Native Hawaiian rights, all of these things versus these big development interests that sometimes they align with the public, but sometimes they don't. If they're trying to build luxury housing on Native Hawaiian cultural sites, that's a conflict with the public interest in multiple ways, or it's against the public interest. And his role as a council member, if it's like a change in zoning, is to weigh that harm against, looking out for the public and then economic benefits and stuff like that. So this is a major issue. Like, it's really important to have conflicts of interest be understood and ruled on to where you have to disclose, because right now we don't know who Councilmember Cook's clients are through LC Hauling. All we know is LC Hauling, which is a business no one has really heard of, and we know he makes $8,000 every month, no matter how much or how little he works for them, and that their clients are construction companies and developers, probably, uh, because we don't know who their clients even are. But it would make sense, right? That they're working for these big developers. But there's been no requirement that he disclose anything. So he's following what they said, but the problem is the Board of Ethics has been so lax and hasn't been willing to, require even a little bit of accountability. And it's good that Les Escovitz did this complaint, because it's going to bring some attention, and they have a chance to address this again. And I know they have a staff person now, but this is really straightforward. Conflict of interest is important, and Councilmember Cook should have to recuse, and that seems like common sense to me.